Now, welcome to part 2 of my new story, and with this being a second part, you may want to check out the first part before watching this one if you haven't, or it might not make complete sense to you. A link to it will be in the comments and description below. For anyone and everyone else who has seen that first part, and hopefully remembers it, it's been about a month or so, I will skip all the preamble and just quickly give a big thank you to the two guys who helped make this happen. That being William Clear, who did the score, and Thomas at Patricore Creations, who did all the artwork. Again, a huge thank you to both of them for all the incredible work you are about to hear and see. And now, let's get back to the story. We're inside a small shuttle, one that's barreling through a bluish hyperspace tunnel, and see our Jedi Master sitting with his eyes locked upon his lightsaber in hand. The one he recently used to end the life of a stone-like being, the supposed last of his kind, and done in defense of a human boy that the being claimed was possessed by some great and powerful darkness. Now that boy sleeps upon a mattress in the ship's cargo hold, and every so often the master takes his tired eyes off the saber and looks upon the boy, carefully studying him, looking for any signs he might be about to wake up, which is the last thing the master wants to happen if some sort of darkness really has taken hold of him. Satisfied that the child is still sound asleep, the master looks once more at his saber, and as he does, it lifts into the air, just a few inches above his now open palm, and then, with little more than a flutter of his eyes in its direction, the saber disassembles into roughly a dozen pieces that also now float right above his hand. At the center of it all is a rather dull-looking Kyber crystal, the crystal that of course powers the weapon of a Jedi. With the master completely focused on it, his Padawan emerges from down a rather short, narrow corridor that leads to the ship's cockpit and says, when she sees him, "I can take over for a bit if you want, let you get a little rest maybe?" The master flinches at the sound of her voice, as if he hadn't sensed her immediate presence or proximity, which surprises her considering he seems to always live in the moment, to always be sensing the ebbs and flows of the Force in everything and everyone around him. It's this ability to not let the past ever seemingly creep into the present that she's always admired the most about him. "I know you could," the master finally responds, looking up at his Padawan. The disassembled lightsaber continues to float just above his hand. "But I'll be fine. Besides, I'm guessing we should be there soon?" "That's exactly what I was coming to tell you. We'll be coming out of hyperspace within the hour and arriving at Delgos 4. "Excellent," the master says before quickly turning his full attention back to the lightsaber, clearly indicating this discussion has now ended. The Padawan catches the hint that something is troubling him, most likely she figures having to end the life of the stone being to save the boy is bothering him far more than he'd ever admit. She starts to turn, but then looks upon the sleeping child and says, "Do you really think your old master will be able to help him?" He seems to consider it only briefly before responding, "Not only is she one of the greatest Jedi I know, but she's also a Velocian." The Padawan gives a questioning look, as if that answers nothing but realizes it was probably supposed to. The master then explains, "They have an uncanny ability to connect with the minds of other beings. Even those among their kind not strong with the Force can do it. And the ones that are strong with it, well, let's just say it's never a wise idea to try and deceive them." A faint smile of remembrance touches his lips as he says that, as if he found that out the hard way once upon a time. The Padawan smiles as well. The thought of her master not being completely honest seems rather ridiculous to her. She believes him to be maybe incapable of lying under any circumstance at this point, but she can imagine things may have been different when he was younger. She then says, "You don't talk about her much." "And I doubt she talks about me much either," he replies. That answer clearly surprises the Padawan, but before she can ask why that might be, the master says, looking again at the child, "I know how hard this is for you, but try not to worry too much. Like I said, we will find a way to save him." She nods at his reassuring words and says back, looking once more at the boy with this odd mixture of anger and sadness in her eyes, "Why did this have to happen to him? What did he do to deserve this?" To that, the master simply replies, "Nothing. The dark side is pure selfishness, Padawan. It cares not for whom it hurts or what it destroys in its relentless pursuit of what it seeks, which just so happens to be absolutely everything. That is why a Jedi must be willing to do whatever they must to defeat it. That is why... The Master falls silent, but the Padawan folds her arms and fills in, "That's why you'll kill him if you have to." The Master lets out a small sigh, clearly realizing how much this is all bothering her, as it no doubt should. He then says, though his face lacks the normal conviction it does when he speaks about pretty much anything, perhaps this is all his destiny, his part to play in a much bigger chain of events that will lead to a necessary outcome we cannot fully understand, such as the end of this darkness. The Padawan shakes her head out of frustration or even anger, clearly shocked he'd even suggest something like that. She then fires back, "You honestly can't believe his purpose was to draw out this darkness and to be killed?" The Master gives a somewhat helpless look and says, "Belief and truth don't always align, do they?" She gives a bit of a shrug, like it's not something she wants to answer. The Master continues, "I don't exactly want to believe that a life should exist for the sole purpose of eclipsing darkness." He then gives a wry smile and concludes, "And yet, is that not why we Jedi exist? Do we not devote our lives to the Force?" "But that's different," the Padawan fires back. "We were given a choice. You gave me the choice to train to be a Jedi or not. I could have gone and done whatever I wanted if I said no. He doesn't have a choice at all." "No, he doesn't, and if not for this darkness, who knows what this boy may have grown up to become, for good or ill, I suppose." He then takes in a deep breath and lets it out slowly before saying, "But if it comes to taking his life to stop this evil, then I have to believe that a greater good will come of it." "So you're saying it's worth killing the boy to stop the darkness?" The Master all but jumps to his feet at that. His eyes are narrowed, making him almost, just almost, look angry, or as close to angry as she's ever seen him anyway. "Worth it? No, I didn't say or mean that at all. I meant I have to believe in a purpose coming from tragedy. I have to believe that when something terrible happens, there will come some good. In darkness, we must find the light, Padawan. Otherwise, staring into and facing the darkness, as we must always be ready and willing to do as Jedi, it will eventually drive us mad." The Master again sits, looking as calm as he ever has. The disassembled lightsaber is still floating right where he left it. The Padawan then says, I'm sorry for not fully understanding, Master." But to that, the Master waves her off and says, "Never apologize for not understanding, only for an unwillingness to learn." She smiles to that and says, "Must everything be a teaching moment with you?" The Master smiles back and responds, "For asking that once again, you can apologize because you should have learned by now that everything is an opportunity for a teaching moment with me, Padawan." The two say nothing more to each other, and the Padawan returns to the cockpit of the ship as the Master once more looks upon the pieces of his lightsaber, the dull, almost lifeless-looking kyber crystal in the center of it all. Suddenly, the crystal is no longer floating in space, and it is no longer dull but rather bright and full of light, like a small beacon of luminous hope, and it's being held between the thumb and forefinger of a boy of an alien race, and one who is maybe around the age of 10 or 12. And they hold it aloft and look upon it quite proudly, while all around them are the cold, dark caves of Ilum, the sacred Jedi Kyber planet. This boy, however, is not alone. Standing nearby, also looking at that very same crystal, is our Jedi Master, though he too is much, much younger, around the same age as the boy. And there is no smile of triumph upon the face of our future Jedi Master, only a look of frustration and defeat. One that the first boy soon notices, and when he does, he wraps his fingers into a ball around the crystal and clutches it into a fist. He then says to our Master, "Don't worry, Thales, I'm sure you'll find yours soon. I mean, you gotta find it, right? Because if not..." Another voice chimes in then, this one belonging to a young alien girl around their age as well. "If not, you'll fail the test and they'll send you away. They'll send you to your home if they even remember where they found you anymore." The two boys turn and glare at the girl as she says, "What? Not saying or acknowledging something isn't going to make it untrue or undo it, or did you two forget that lesson already?" She then glances down at her own kyber crystal that rests in the palm of her hand as the boy says to her, "There's no way they do that. Thales has more skill with the Force than all the rest of us combined. I mean, we all saw what he did during the last agility test. Even Master Yoda was impressed." The girl shrugs rather carelessly at that and says, "And yet, no crystal has picked him, and without a crystal, you can't make a lightsaber, and without a lightsaber, you can't be a Jedi." The boy then says, "Well, I'm going to help him find his crystal then." You can't, she quickly says back. We were told to leave the caves as soon as we find our crystal. I'm on my way out now, as a matter of fact. But to that, the boy responds, we were also told to help each other, remember? She rolls her eyes a bit and then says, as she starts to walk away, towards the way out of this maze of frozen rooms and corridors that is Ilum. Fine, stay behind then. Get trapped in here for all I care. The two boys then watch her walk down the corridor and disappear into the frozen darkness. It's Thales, our future Jedi Master, who then says to his friend, she's right, Garm. The sun's going down and the wall, it'll freeze over with ice again. You'll be trapped in here with me. Then neither of us will ever be a Jedi. Garm then puts his hand on Thales' shoulder and says, both of us are going to be Jedi, together. That's been the plan since forever, right? Besides, I couldn't do this all by myself. All of this doesn't come as easily to me as it does to you. You were meant to be a Jedi, and I'm meant to be the Jedi at your side, just like we've always said we'd be. Thales then counters, and yet Shelda was right. I can't find a crystal. While you already have yours. You're the only one here who's meant to be a Jedi, it seems. Garm tightens his fist around his crystal and says, well, what if you just take one? Anyone? He looks around and continues, I mean, there's thousands of crystals in here, millions even, just pick one. Thales frowns and responds, Yoda said the crystal is supposed to pick us, that we're supposed to just know which one belongs to us. You even said that's how you found yours, that it was calling out to you, that it was glowing. Thales then looks around and concludes with a frown, I don't sense or see anything. Garm again starts to look all around him until his eyes settle on a patch of wall that has several crystals protruding from it. He marches on over to it, studies them briefly before his eyes settle on a peculiar looking one that seems to almost have a twist to it instead of being straight like most of them are. Garm then says, this one's rather interesting and odd, as he uses his fingers to try to pull it free of the wall made of ice and rock. Thales immediately then says, what exactly are you doing? Garm responds, Yoda said we could help each other, so I'm helping you. Thales quickly shakes his head. I don't think he meant like this. But he doesn't right away make any sort of move to potentially stop him. Instead, several long moments go by of Thales secretly hoping this just might work, before finally his moral compass aligns and he starts to walk towards Garm to stop him. He is willing to accept that maybe his destiny isn't to become a Jedi. I almost got it, I think, Garm then says, and as soon as he does, the two boys hear a loud popping sound, and a long, deep vertical crack forms in the wall with the crystals in it. Before either boy can say anything or react, a large portion of the wall gives way and comes crashing down on Garm, narrowly missing Thales as well. The collapse is also accompanied by a thunderous boom that echoes through the caverns. It then takes a moment or two for Thales to process what just happened, and when he does, he sees Garm has been all but buried. Only his head and one hand aren't pinned under the massive mound of ice and rock. His first instinct, his Jedi instinct, is to use the Force to unbury his friend, and he immediately holds out both hands and concentrates, and almost right away some of the large rocks begin to shift ever so slightly. One even starts to lift, before then crashing back down on the massive heap, and Thales lets out an exhausted breath as it does. It took everything he had to do that much, and there are so many rocks and so much ice, it's obvious to him that'll never work. Thales then yells for help, his voice echoing down the corridor, before he dashes to his friend and kneels by his side. He doesn't know what to do, so he takes his hand and holds it tightly while apologizing over and over and over again. Though he doesn't even know exactly what he's sorry for, other than this nagging voice in the back of his mind telling him if he'd only found his crystal, none of this would have ever happened. The apologizing then abruptly stops as he finds himself now staring into his friend's eyes and, in a way, becoming almost hypnotized by what he sees there, by the fear. Fear unlike anything he could have ever imagined. Fear so intense and palpable that it freezes him on the inside more than the harshest winds of Ilum ever could. His friend is beyond terrified to die, and with his body and lungs being crushed under the rock and ice, it's impossible for Garm to do anything more than let out wheezing sobs of pain, though it seems there is something he wants to say to Thales. It's right there and then that Thales can't help but think of how many times they have envisioned themselves as Jedi Knights, fighting heroically together against any and all evil that might arise. Oftentimes, if not usually, those shared made-up stories ended with one of them or both of them having to give their lives to stop some great darkness, to sacrifice themselves to defeat an all-powerful Sith Lord that threatened the galaxy itself. But Thales shakes those thoughts away and stares back into his friend's eyes, stares back into the all-consuming fear that resides there. But in an instant, the fear simply vanishes, as does the life from his friend's eyes. And despite their countless stories, the shared dreams of grandeur that had fueled them through their hard days of Jedi training, there is no magnificent last stand for Garm to make against the most terrible of Sith Lords. There are no final triumphant and heroic words to be uttered before the end that will echo throughout history. There is only death. Garm's hand then goes slack, and from it and into Thales' hand tumbles a kyber crystal, Garm's kyber crystal. How much time then goes by he cannot even begin to guess at, but eventually he hears a voice, the voice of a Jedi Master, the one who brought them here, the one that brought them to Ilum to find their crystals, the first real step to becoming a true Jedi Knight, and the Master is asking them, what has happened here? All Thales can do is shake his head and wipe the tears away with the back of his hand, tears that he hadn't realized had fallen until right now. He then considers telling the truth, the whole truth, but then those stories of them becoming heroic Jedi, they come to his mind once more, and he figures the truth will destroy that dream, and then neither of them will ever save the galaxy from darkness. His sudden unwavering belief in those dreams makes the lie sound completely believable. I don't know what happened. The wall, it just collapsed on him out of nowhere. Thales then feels his master lay a hand upon his back and hears him ask, "Did you find your crystal, youngling?" Thales looks up and sees that accompanying the master is Shelda, the alien girl from before. The two lock eyes, and in them he sees compassion, overwhelming compassion for him, which surprises him because she's always given the two of them such a hard time. The master then says, "Thales, if you found your crystal, you should head back to the ship. I will take care of this." Thales, still locking eyes with Shelda, begins to nod his head and says as he holds aloft the crystal that ever so briefly had belonged to his friend, "Yes, master, I found it." To his surprise, Shelda says nothing, and instead even gives him a rather subtle nod of the head as if she approves or at least understands the choice he had made, the choice to not be so honest. She then moves towards him and reaches out a hand, helping him to his feet after he takes it. All she does then is give him a sad yet somehow comforting smile before turning to go. And a few moments later, after saying a final goodbye to Garm, Thales also heads down the corridor and towards the exit, but something catches his eye, a glint of something, and what it turns out to be is an oddly shaped kyber crystal, the one his friend Garm was trying to pull from the wall to give to him. Thales takes a couple quick steps away from it, determined to leave the cause of this tragedy behind. But then he stops, and with the Jedi Master focused on using the Force to free his friend's body from the rock and ice, Thales quickly bends down, scoops it up, and drops the crystal into his pocket. He then turns his attention back to the other kyber crystal, the one that had belonged to his friend ever so briefly, and he makes a vow there and then to put it to good use, to fulfill those dreams if that's where his destiny lies. Which is when we're taken back to the present, and Thales is still looking at that rather dull kyber crystal, a crystal that once chose another, that picked Garm and fell from his lifeless hand into his own, but now floats amongst the other pieces of his lightsaber. He makes a quick flick with his hand and it quickly reassembles, and after taking hold of it, he mutters to himself something about if killing the last of an ancient species is really a good use before returning the lightsaber to his belt. It's then that his Padawan again emerges from the cockpit and says, I'm sorry, Master. I don't mean to be difficult. I know we as Jedi, we must be willing to do what we must sometimes, even things we really don't want to do. I know purpose is not always easy to see. It's just I want to be able to save the boy." All Thales says to that as he looks upon the boy and sees the face of Garm is, "I understand, Neris. I understand." And that is where this part ends. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you thought of this part of the story. Tell me what you think might happen next, or where this is all going, or any theories or anything you might have about any of it, or questions too. Whatever the case may be though, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.